Yeah, how does that? Oh, jumping the gun.
Go.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the design system. I always said design token, design system team sync meeting. Just myself and Dan here. And we're probably going to chat through a lot of design token stuff.
Sounds good. Coming back to we were just talking about the complexities of getting design tokens to the different places and how nice it is when there's a spec figured out and how painful it is when a spec is not figured out. Um, did the like desired map of how we wanted it to be in Figma make sense? Was it helpful laying it all out like that?
Yes, it's helpful to provide that kind of North Star. I'm still unsure as to what's possible. I think there's like not like what's possible, but what's simplest or most obvious or like least transformations. So there's kind of a top-down, bottom-up kind of philosophy with this stuff. Um, and I'm coming from the lens of uh, can we obfuscate or automate as much transformations as possible so that what's ingested is like as close to the source JSON as possible, and then its um, transformations are what is required for Figma. Um, AKA, let's minimize editorializing the tokens like we do for Tailwind, where we go through and say, actually, no, this one's this, and this one's this, and this one's also here, and then this one goes here. That structure should be in the tokens themselves, in the JSON itself. And I want to minimize that. Um, yes. And to provide context to what makes this complex is, and why the specification is fun, but also not so fun. Specification works, we add the shadows. For CSS shadows, Style Dictionary comes with a pre-built transform, so it's a single line, and it just goes, this complex object becomes a single line, bang, CSS shadows work. For other consumption, like JS, we don't know what that looks like. For Figma, we have an idea of what that looks like. Those transformations are more complex and require interventions. Um, the two biggest things about Figma that come to mind is the order of things. So you have like a collection, which is a Figma concept, not a design token concept. And then you have modes, and then within those modes, you have variables or design tokens, variables. Um, and that is a different paradigm to how tokens are authored, where you have a token which has modes and has values within those modes, which is fine. It's just a different um, transformation thing. The second one is Figma transforms colors and things differently. And it's a very bespoke or interesting approach as to how they define colors. So it's not it's not a single line pre-built color becomes hex, color becomes HSL, something that just works out the box. It's a RGBA float point scale or something from memory. Um, yeah, so there's a lot of intervention that has to happen for Figma. We moved all that to the plugin level. We may want to look into how we can bring that back, what we need to bring back, and what can kind of hopefully just work out the box and remove manual transformations. Sorry, that's a lot of guffed.
Yeah. No, no, no fun. And because it looks like from the outside, because we did everything, uh, because we were figuring it out as we went, um, we figured different stuff out in different places. And it seems like it would be better for us if the similar stuff exists in similar places and the different stuff exists in its different places. For to give
Yeah,
it,
yes and no. I think yes. But it's not just us, right? Like I think the we were lucky that we came in as the design token format module was becoming more refined. I think a lot of different companies, design systems, solutions, proprietary things like Figma have made good guesses as to how dynamic variables that handle modes and other scopes should be created. And all those have kind of swung and missed at different implementations. I think we spoke before the recording about this, is like the spec is great, but the spec is still draft and still moving, and there isn't concrete outcomes for things like compound typography tokens or composite typography tokens. Um, Dimensions are kind of a new way of authoring. They're kind of nice, but they're not out the box works for you style dictionary just yet. Um, yeah, box shadows kind of work. They're pretty cool. But to Figma, yeah. And I think there's a big gap between uh, what is truly like the design token format module way of authoring things and how tools consume them. I think there's a lot of like, technically it can work, but there's a lot of transformations that happen in between that path. So that idea that things are first class citizens or tokens just work is kind of marketing.
Yeah, especially for Figma. I think they just wanted to stop everyone on their live streams anytime to do an event, just writing design tokens in the chat.
Yeah,
I suspect that they gave people design tokens. Designers looked and went, "Oh wait, these are actually really hard. Uh, we're gonna just ignore that and move on to something else." So I expect their usage is Figma's a business, and I think they will invest in the stuff that is generating them the most money. And if it's and perhaps we can look into the fact that they've not continued to invest in it as a clue as to what the usage, how widespread the usage of it has actually been.
I think so. I think so. And what gives me real hope is that, the authors of this working group, the specification and style dictionary have moved very rapidly, and things are a lot cleaner and easier than they were 6 months ago. Um, like that show Transform was a mind blowing for me. I went down some pathways with that. I was writing all sorts of craziness, and it ended up being a single line. Um, so where there is alignment, things happen quickly. But like you said, I think there is some unknowns. I think typography is an unknown. I think colors sorted, spacing sorted. Um, Typography is unknown. Well, composite typography tokens, I think, are less known. Um, Font size stuff, that's fine. And there's another one, but I can't remember it. Anyway,
Do you have any contacts on the working group?
uh, part of me feels like I should sign up for it at this point. The amount I've read it, it should really lend a hand there. Just pretty uh, stacked at the moment in life, so I don't want to. But I really should. No, I want to reach out to the people who are authoring the style dictionary as well, because they are very, very close to it. So um, yeah, I think that's where the general alignment is coming from. Style dictionary and the design token format module are kind of merging into one thing.
Cool. I got warm intros to two people, two of the editors on the design token format module, if you wanted to pursue it.
That'd be good. Later, next year.
Ah! Cool. Anything else on Figma design tokens format module?
Ah,
So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is first, thanks for reading my manifesto last week. I was trying to wrap my head around what's Scott trying to say, and then it ended up coming up like that. Um, so a question that's come out of it is when do we deprecate design tokens? Do we only deprecate them if we've got the migration path figured out. For example, the opacity, we're adding opacity values to the design system that we're pretty certain we don't want to exist in the design system long term. So if we want to discourage new use of them and we don't deprecate them, are there any other mechanisms or strategies we can use to discourage new use of it? Or is it only we've got it figured out migration path?
I don't think there's any hard and fast rules here. I think we can talk about different options and approaches. What I'm intrigued by is what your interpretation of opacity values are and why you wouldn't have them in the design system long term. Is it the current scale? Is it the values? Does it have an opacity at all? Like, what's your interpretation of that?
If we start at the most concrete, or the least abstract, we've kind of already got an opacity scale. If we look at the alpha light and alpha dark, where we've got values around multiplying 2. So let me just get them up quickly. Constant alpha light. So yeah, 2, 4, 6, 8, 8 times 2, 16, 24, 40, and I think there's a 64 somewhere as well that we use in dark. Is there a 64? I imagined a 64. I think previously there used to be a 64 for the background of modals and stuff. In light, we've got 36 as well. None of those values appear in the tailwind scale that we're adopting, which gives me a clue that perhaps if we were starting from scratch, we would do something closer to this 2, 4, 6, 8 around a base 8 like system. Then the other part of the question is what is opacity used for? Do we encourage it at all? That's something that's harder to answer. We haven't, but I think generally the design systems leaned against it, like don't mess around with it. But I don't think that will be a long-term solution until we figure out how to indicate stuff as disabled or not available to people. I think that's a place where I think people want to use opacity, and the design system probably needs to go, okay, here's how we're going to support it, either through this whole set of styles that you can use, or stick a 0.5 on top and call it a day.
Yeah, classic. Dark mode, filter, invert one or whatever. So yes, okay. That's good context. I did dig through the product like very quickly, like half an hour. Digging through the opacity class usage or utility usage, and it is a lot of this kind of like is dragged, is disabled, or these kind of statefulness things, or these kind of like this thing is in a way that it just needs to be not as visible right now, kind of thing. So yes, that makes sense. To go back to your question, so should we deprecate these straight away? I think that was in the MR. My answer is no. I don't think we should deprecate something unless there's a reasonable alternative. So if someone's reaching for opacity 2 or whatever, which I believe is 20%, we give them, opacity 24 or opacity or whatever the scale is, the thing that's a base 8. scale. So maybe it's 16 instead of 20 or whatever. However, there is a precedent for deprecating something without alternatives, aka all the colors are added as design tokens and deprecated, all the old colors, the inverted colors. In theory, you can use the non-inverted colors, but then you have to manually do dark mode yourself. So yeah, the historical relevancy of that is that we had to support those colors because they were used, in SaaS everywhere. They had to become that, they had to, it was all or nothing. They all had to come over. We deprecated them all straight away. We inserted gray, 10 to 950, blue, etc., and deprecated them straight away. So there is, context or precedent for this. The other side is, what does deprecating actually do? Not a heck of a lot. It displays a deprecation badge in the design system table in the docs, and that's about it. What am I going to say here? So it's a way for us to, mark our territory and say that this is something you probably shouldn't use. It doesn't communicate itself through the Tailwind tooling, and I wrote some context I'll add to the agenda after when I find the link. How the design token dictionary object, which has everything, the path, deprecation, description, values, all this sort of stuff, how that turns into a key value pair for Tailwind. So key is opacity 1 and the value is 10%. That's so when we put in content to the Tailwind config for the theme config, there's no way to decorate those, as far as I can tell, with any information which says this is deprecated or has a description or anything like that. If it's a Tailwind class, it's a Tailwind class. So in that sense, anyone using opacity classes in the code base, I don't think will get feedback as to, hey, this is a deprecated thing. The alternative is the inverse, where I think we do this for colors, but I think we do this as a danger bot rule and not a lint rule. We sniff out any opacity classes in the code base or any consumer, most likely the product, and we go, hey, you're using opacity, you probably shouldn't. Accessibility issues, contrast issues, whatever it is. Use this thing instead. Or, hey, you're using opacity 1, you should be using opacity 8, 0.8, or whatever to the base 8 scale. That assumes that those are defined. It's a lot of rambling. Sorry. I see you typing.
Did I catch that? I condensed it to one sentence though, that last one.
Yes, I'll amend it. And the catch with that as well is style lint and ES-lint rules, because classes and things can be used in both places.
What a world we live in.
Which is, I think, why we did the danger bot rules. I can't remember. There's some stuff there. Some reasons. So yeah, I think my take with opacity, I'm viewing it from a slightly different lens because I'm not looking at it from mostly the ongoing governance, opacity usage, and the accuracy or meaningfulness of that usage. I'm seeing it as a replacing manual definitions with config or design tokens. I think it would be strange to deprecate them without an alternative. I think that's maybe where I draw the line. And the reason I say that is because it may give consumers who are going through the design token table or looking for values pause with the design system and going, what's going on here? There is an alternative. Like it might detract from what we're trying to resolve with our usage of the design system, and people feeling like things are available and ready for them. I also feel like opacity 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever. They're things. Like it's pretty low risk. I think their use of the product could be measured and judged, but as classes, should be fine.
Yeah. I think my concerns stem from the same, but my assumption is a different thing will happen. So similar, someone looks through the list, and my worry is someone goes, "Ah, cool, pasty 20 design system says let's go. I'm gonna stick that on my things," and I can't think of a situation where that is going to result in anything that we would normally recommend as as a as an approach. But it puts it there as, oh, the design system said I could use it.
It's a really good point.
But
Dang it.
that's that's a more cynical, not assuming the best, not trusting consumers' point of view. So it's should be weighted less than
So
hey, we can trust our colleagues.
if say okay, so say we've got this whatever you want to call it scale. I don't know what you even call it, 1 through 10 scale that we've inherited. Um, okay, so say we deprecate those and we offer a base 8 scale, so that it aligns to our thing. That's still like, we deprecate those, we propose those, we would still have this problem, right? Like someone would go, oh
Yeah,
yeah, I can use opacity 12 or 16. Um,
we do.
mm,
We do. And really those 816 are probably why we would want them in design tokens is to like pair up stuff. So we know in buttons, for example, we have like a transparent red in the danger state. It's almost like we want to go yoink something from the transparency scale, yoink something from the red scale, and that's our new value for that
uh-huh.
transparent red. We wouldn't necessarily want to encourage the use of it, but then none of the constants we want to encourage the use of. So perhaps it is no different. And perhaps the real solution is if we identify people are trying to mark stuff as disabled or not interactable at this time, that we offer a consistent value for it and say, hey, use this. And then when the time comes, we can do something more proper with it.
That's where my head's at with a lot of these things. So with Z index and stuff as well, is define the constants, whatever. Consumers probably shouldn't use them. They may, and they probably currently do in the sense that they are defined as tailwind utils. Um, the idea being that, yeah, should we go through and audit or review the ones that are in the product and say 80% of them are using opacity 5 because they just want like opacity 50%. We create something like GL opacity, a semantic token, GL opacity, blah, disabled, stateless, hover, dragged, whatever the thing is. Find or replace and change GL opacity 5 with the semantic one, and then we can increase that to 64% or whatever, which gives us some reasonable, outcome. Yeah, it doesn't really resolve the underlying issues of people using constants, but I think that's more of a lint and some way of automating that work. I think is like that's what we need to invest in.
So Chuck understood that the use of constants solve or managed through some kind of linting. But the bit before where you said swapping out something for a semantic class, I missed that. The first
Yeah,
thing we were talking about.
my thinking there was just like just to reiterate what you said before. I think it's like if we find a lot of people are using the same opacity value a lot to handle some sort of state. So say everyone's setting things to 50% to make them disabled or whatever. And we know that that's probably not going to work in most cases. And say like 64% works in the sense it's high, slightly high contrast or whatever. Um, I think what we might do in that instance is introduce like a semantic token like GL opacity, whatever, disabled, probably not, but faded, whatever. Um, and find and replace that usage in the product and use the semantic one. And that way we can kind of prescribe some meaning to it.
Mm,
Um, whether or not that actually resolves that problem, this is all very hypothetical because I don't know for certain what the opacities are being used for. Um, it's a lot of 0 and 1, I think, a 0 and 10, something's disappeared and then it comes back and probably leveraging transitions or something, or
yeah.
I don't know.
Sure. Sure. Um, whole sounds like a whole lot of we don't know for this particular one. So happy to go with your judgment on it. Is there any way that we could is there any way that we can currently measure usage over time within the design system?
Usage over time of the Tailwind classes or like
Yeah,
utilities in the design system or in the product?
in the product. So I'm imagining um something like uh here's how many semantic text colors were added each week, and we could see that over a 6-month period. Um,
So we do have the code scanner. There's two things. So we have the code scanner and we have the Tailwind utility class scanner, which was used for the migration effort, which mostly tracked the removal of non-Tailwind utilities or something.
mhm,
The code scanner, I think, can still be used for historical context just to see the adoption of like GL text subtle or something like that. And that's a relatively easy thing to amend with other rules. So for like opacity, Z index or whatever. And that should provide historical context. I'm using a lot of shoulds, woulds, coulds, because I don't know for certain. But we were using that actively throughout the dark mode design token migrations to get that historical
mm.
context.
Um, if we can, then I think we can get some certainty around some of the concerns, because if it's pretty stable, the usage, and then we make this change and it starts going up,
Mhm.
then we can go, oh, um our hope our hope was misplaced. And we can do something about it. But if it stays relatively stable, then it gives us it can inform prioritization.
Good plan. Let me just share my screen and bring this over. Um, so this is the code scanner, which has stuff in it. And this is the page I usually have saved. So we can see GeoTech Subtle has, 1,500 findings and blah, blah, blah. Granular goes down. Historical trends, but the problem is that this contains a lot of stuff. So it contains Hamel migration, like heading migration stuff, color
Mm.
function stuff, and I believe some accessibility stuff. Maybe not. Maybe another one. Can't remember. So there's a lot of muddiness in here, which makes it difficult to track. Um, but you can see general trends, so we can probably map some stuff out. So like text color, utility, class usage, third from the bottom there is probably the one we're measuring with this big blue stripe here. Um, yeah, we can build tools like this. I think we could probably fork this and have like a design token scanner or something. Um, Yeah, maybe design token tailwind utility scanner, put it that way. And we can see trends over time and help us measure, incorrect or correct usage of things. Yeah, it's probably a little bit of effort involved to set that up reliably.
Mm. Lush. I'll put some into that effect in the MR then, and we can get them done. On to the next.
That'd be lovely. Yeah, and I can get onto the typography foundation ones and then the composite typography ones, which should be fun.
Good luck, Scott. Lash, anything else you want to talk about today?
No, I think that's it.
Lovely, jubbly. Enjoy your dinner.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Start of your day.
Ugh, don't remind me.